Synchronicity, the subconscious above the deep unconscious and below the conscious, reflects both syntax and semantics. It is here that synchronicity operates. The subconscious scans for possible meaningful interactions and then syntactically makes them happen. Wikipedia says, synchronicity is a concept first introduced by analytical psychologist Carl Jung, which holds that events are meaningful coincidences if they occur with no causal relationship, yet seem to be meaningfully related. Jung variously defines synchronicity as an acausal connecting, togetherness, principal meaningful coincidence, and acausal parallelism. In 1952 Jung published a paper Synchronicity and a Causal Connecting Principle, in a volume which also contained a related study by the physicist and Nobel laureate Wolfgang Pauli. Jung's belief was that, just as events may be connected by causality, they may also be connected by meaning. Events connected by meaning need not have an explanation in terms of causality. Jung considered only syntactic causation, Aristotelian efficient causation. Aristotelian final causation is semantic causation. Efficient causation is about how, and final causation about why. A system that is both syntactic and semantic can exhibit both efficient and final causation. Synchronicity requires a final cause to be identified, semantics, and then an efficient cause to make it happen, syntactic. Jung believed that synchronicities were acausal. In fact, they are doubly causal, in terms of both semantics and syntax. Thinking is a language. You cannot think in the absence of language. Thinking is not chaos. It's not randomness. It's not material interactions. It's not mindless. It's not mystical. It's not indefinable. It's not an insoluble mystery. Thinking is a language. Thinking is made of language. Thinking is ontological language. Anything that is not a language cannot explain what a thought is, or how thought functions. A language is either natural or man-made. Man-made language cannot be the basis of thinking, since thinking was used to create man-made language in the first place. There is only one natural language, mathematics. There cannot be multiple natural languages since that would constitute a language version of Cartesian substance dualism, and it would be impossible to explain the separate origins of the languages and how they interact. They would require a translator, and where would that come from? Mathematics is the language of existence, the language in which thinking is conducted. Once a man-made language has been constructed, it is then possible to think in that language rather than nature's language. That is one of humanity's central problems. Nature's language is a logos language. A man-made language is a mythos language. Humanity can't help but think about reality in terms of their fabricated languages, their stories, their mythos. Human languages automatically falsify reality, automatically generate a man-made simulacrum of reality. To access actual reality, you need to think in terms of reality's own language, not a language invented by humanity. How do you overcome a problem like your own language? The thing that most deceives you is your own thinking. Because it is conducted in the wrong language. The mind mill, it must be admitted that perception, and anything that depends on it, cannot be explained in terms of mechanistic causation, that is, in terms of shapes and motions. Let us pretend that there was a machine, which was constructed in such a way as to give rise to thinking, sensing, and having perceptions. You could imagine it expanded in size, while retaining the same proportions, so that you could go inside it, like going into a mill. On this assumption, your tour inside it would show you the working parts pushing each other, but never anything which would explain a perception. So perception is to be sought, not in compounds or machines, but in simple substances. Furthermore, there is nothing to be found in simple substances, apart from perceptions and their changes. Again, all the internal actions of simple substances can consist in nothing other than perceptions and their changes. Leibniz raises a crucial question. What does mental activity actually look like? He contended that mental action can occur only in minds, and never in something such as a physical brain, a biological equivalent of a mind mill. Imagine we expanded a brain to the size of a mill, and walked around in it. Where would we find love, perception, reasoning, emotion, free will, and so on? What would we be looking for? Where would we be looking? What exactly would we expect to see? If we can't define what we are expecting, it will be impossible to find it. We won't know it when we see it. Imagine we were looking for God, and God was a singularity of energy. Even if we could somehow detect this singularity, how would we know it was God? What constitutes a God experience? What constitutes evidence for God? Imagine we encountered a very powerful super being that did amazing, godlike things. How would we know it was God rather than simply a very powerful being? Leibniz made it clear that he didn't believe the workings of a mind mill could ever reveal mental activity, but what would you see if you could examine the thinking activity of a monad? How would you know that a monadic mind was in love, or perceiving a smell, or detecting a disgusting taste, or engaged in philosophy? The contention of ontological mathematics is that everything in the universe is made of sinusoidal waves. All minds are made of sinusoidal waves. An individual mind is made of a complete set of sinusoids, i.e., a collection of every possible sinusoidal frequency. If you could look inside an individual mind, what you would see is nothing but waves. Waves interacting with each other and producing wavefunctions. These wavefunctions are thoughts of every kind: perceptions, sensations, emotions, intuitions, reasonings. Waves, and the wavefunctions they produce, are thoughts. Every wave or wavefunction is associated with an exact, unique experience. Imagine you had a split-screen mind. In one screen is what you are thinking, the semantic thought. The thought with a meaning, the thought is experience, and in the other is what your thought is made of, the syntactic thought. The thought is form, structure, as an ontological and epistemological entity. You cannot look at syntax and see a thought experience. However, when you put your semantic experiences and their syntax side by side, you finally understand what is going on. Your syntactic and semantic thoughts are of course the same thoughts. They are two aspects of the same system, a dual-aspect monism. They are two sides of one coin. The problem with Leibniz's thought experiment was that he was expecting to see a semantic process via a syntactic process, and that can never happen. If Leibniz could see the mind mill properly, via a split screen showing both its syntax and semantics, he would then see that the operations of the mind mill were producing all manner of semantic outputs, all the amazing activity of mind. In fact, the actual appearance of the mill is its primary semantic expression. The human brain is, physically, a syntax machine, but is also apparently associated with semantics, since humans are preoccupied with meaning. Here's the problem. What is experiencing the semantics of the mind mill, or a brain, or a monad? If we start with an individual monadic mind, every sinusoid inside it is experienced by it. The vast majority of sinusoids are experienced unconsciously. No sinusoid from outside a monad is directly experienced by it. However, when external sinusoids interact with internal sinusoids and create combined wavefunctions, the compound wavefunction is then experienced by the monad. What is a brain? A brain is a material object that belongs to the collective world of space and time. Material objects are constructed from sinusoids supplied by all monads. Therefore, no particular monad owns a material object or directly experiences it. The owner of the world, of all the sinusoids in the world, is the cosmic mind, the collection of all monads. The cosmic mind is what experiences the world. The human brain is a material object in the material world, hence is experienced by the cosmic mind, but a brain is also something that is directly linked to an individual monad. A brain controls a body in the space-time universe, and an individual monad controls an individual brain. It is through a brain and a body that a monadic mind can experience space-time and matter. The brain is designed to interface with a monad, hence is much more related to the individual monadic mind than to the cosmic mind. However, via the brain, the cosmic mind can indirectly experience a monadic mind. The cosmic mind can interact with the brain and thus interact with an individual mind. A Leibnizian mind mill, which is an early conception of an artificial intelligence, is not linked to an individual monadic mind. It is experienced by individual minds only via those sinusoids donated to the world by individual monads. The cosmic mind experiences the mind mill, but only in a crude, mechanistic way. The mind mill is nothing like a human brain. To resemble a brain, it would have to be host to a monadic mind. If it did, then, because it is constituted very differently from a brain, with a very different type of matter, inorganic rather than organic, it would be experienced in a radically different way from a brain. It would produce markedly different Wava functions in its interactions with a monadic mind. Qualia belong to the semantic order, which is exactly why they are not understood by science, which deals only with the syntactic order. Science has no semantics. It deals exclusively in syntactic terms, which is why it is so woefully wrong about reality. In a system of pure syntax, there is no meaning, no purpose, and no point. This is exactly what science claims. Science even denies free will, and barely tolerates the concept of mind. If it could ignore mind, it certainly would. The behaviorist B.F. Skinner treated the mind as a redundant black box. All he cared about was observable behavior. Input enters the brain and output exits the brain, but the processes that relate to the processing of the input to create the output are not examined and are not deemed relevant. Mental processes are unobservable, hence are irrelevant to science. Semantics are ignored. If science acknowledged semantics, it would have to acknowledge mind and teleology. Everything in science would change. Science is regarded as a purely syntactic theory based on physical reality. Mathematics is regarded as a purely syntactic theory based on abstract unreality, i.e., mathematics is treated as the ultimate expression of syntax, and wholly man-made, because how could abstract unreality be reflective of reality? Ontological mathematics is revolutionary because it confers semantics on mathematics, and makes mathematics not only natural, but the actual language of nature. Simple-minded people, including all scientists, find it impossible to conceive of mathematics as real. In fact, a simple test of true intelligence would be to ask people if mathematics is real or not. Only the smartest people in the world can grasp that mathematics is real. Yet it's not difficult to work out. If you removed mathematics from science, science would collapse. A 100% collapse. Science conducted with 100% experimental success would be 100% useless without mathematics to make sense of the results and turn them into formulae. The most obvious description of science without mathematics is alchemy. The science that prevailed until science was mathematized. Alchemy was a quasi-religion and system of magic and miraculous transformations. It's not experiments that make science successful, it's mathematics. Once you understand this, you understand that mathematics is real and science unreal, not the other way around. Science is mathematics passed through the filter of the fallacious man-made philosophy of materialism and empiricism. Science is man-made mythos added to natural logos, mathematics. Science, not mathematics, is the man-made syntactic theory. The redundant universe Occam's razor says that we should not multiply entities unnecessarily. What could be more unnecessary than a universe of pure syntax, a universe devoid of meaning and purpose, a literally pointless universe? Imagine a universe without minds, without intelligent beings, without anyone to know the universe and experience it. Why would the universe bother to exist? It would be wholly redundant. There is no point having an unnecessary universe, and therefore such a thing would never exist. To believe otherwise is to privilege syntax over semantics, and there is no sufficient reason for that. Leibniz said, "Everything that is possible demands to exist." This implies striving, meaning, purpose. Things that need not exist will not exist. Things that do exist will exist as simply and productively as possible. Mathematical waves are the simplest and most productive entities imaginable. They are the basic units of syntax and semantics. Existence, if it is not pointless, meaningless and purposeless, as science wants you to believe, is therefore the opposite of that. It's meaningful, purposeful, goal-oriented, and it not only has a point, it is the point. You can't have a reality that's a bit meaningful and a bit not. It's all of one and none of the other. Meaning, like everything else, is subject to the famous problem of Cartesian interaction. If everything is a monism, then, in order to avoid intractable Cartesian dualism, that monism must reflect a single meaning, and not rival meanings, no meaning at all, or mixed meanings. The point of existence is to find the answer to itself and thus become aware of itself. The answer to existence lies in its maximum expression, its optimal configuration, in its wholeness, totality, completeness and perfection. Syntactically, existence is perfect when it is perfectly symmetrical, perfectly arranged, perfectly ordered. The perfect semantic state that accompanies the perfect syntactic state is the God state, the state of perfect knowledge. Perfect experience, perfect thinking, perfect reasoning, perfect intuition, perfect knowledge, perfect understanding and perfect self-awareness. Cosmic syntax and semantics. You cannot have a syntax without a semantics, or vice versa. Anything that has a syntax and a semantics is a language. Existence is a language. It's a self-perfecting language, a language seeking to communicate perfectly. What is it communicating with? With itself, with every part of itself. The universe is not made of matter that jumped out of non-existence, as science claims. It is made out of an eternal language, the language of mathematics. Matter is meaningless, purposeless, and pointless. Language is inherently meaningful and purposeful. The task of nature's language is to be optimally fluent. A self-optimizing language is one that attains perfect syntax and semantics, a language fit for God. God is what is created when nature's language perfects itself. God understands all things perfectly via this perfect language. At the God stage, there is nothing more to be said, nothing more to be done, nothing more to be known and understood. God therefore kills himself. This is divine suicide. God is dead. Long live God. What could be a better fate for God than to keep becoming God? Should God exist perfectly forever, or should God be permanently reincarnated and keep having to find himself, keep having to return to himself? If you find life boring occasionally, imagine how much worse it would be for God. If you are perfect, how can you endure your perfection? It has killed every possibility of being challenged, of overcoming resistance, of striving. Everything is complete. Everything is finished. Nothing grows. Nietzsche wrote, "What is good? All that heightens the feeling of power. The will to power, power itself in man. What is bad? All that proceeds from weakness. What is happiness? The feeling that power increases, that a resistance is overcome. Once you have maximized your power, how can you feel good again? You have nowhere left to go. If your power is no longer increasing, you cannot feel happy. You are therefore unhappy, infinitely unhappy. This is the worst possible depression, a cosmic depression. Nothing is worse. You must kill yourself to feel good again, to feel happy again. You must commit divine suicide. You have no choice." Nietzsche wrote, "The weak and ill-constituted shall perish. First principle of our philanthropy. And one shall help them to do so. In a sense, when you have become perfect, you have become weak. You must exist in a state of total stasis, clinging on to what you have. Otherwise, the only way is down." Nietzsche wrote, "I call an animal, a species, an individual, depraved when it loses its instincts, when it chooses, when it prefers, what is harmful to it. To choose to be God forever is to choose what is harmful to you. You have killed the possibility of happiness, change, growth. You have nowhere to go." Nietzsche wrote, "Pity on the whole thwarts the law of evolution, which is the law of selection. God cannot have pity for himself. He must act to save himself. Divine suicide isn't the end. It's the beginning. It's reincarnation. It's the cycle of life. Even God reincarnates. As above, so below. Existence is an entelechy. It has a goal to complete itself, to convert all of its potentiality to actuality. Existence is guided by the principle of perfection. Of achieving perfection, then starting over and achieving it again, forever. What could be a better fate than to become perfect infinite times, to experience the ultimate high infinite times? What other fate would you choose? To stay the same forever? That is hell itself. An entelechy contains and realizes a final cause that directs it. But for every final cause there is a first cause, and the two must be perfectly balanced.